Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Theater Podcast. I'm Alan Seals, and this episode is a special crossover episode from another podcast of mine called Was It Chance? A podcast I co-host with my amazing friend Heather Vickery. If you follow that podcast, you'll know that every now and then we do have the pleasure of having a Broadway guest or two, which of course I figured you'd want to hear about in this feed as well. So here we are. Crossover episode context established. Boom. Okay, the guest for this episode, Andy Mientus, is a super cool guy who, by embracing a love for Spring Awakening and an offer from the production team to run possibly the first ever official social media fan account, he found his way to starring on Broadway in that same show. So you also may know Andy from his TV roles in Smash and as Hartley Rathaway in The Flash, stories we of course get into as well, but you know what to do. Find me on the socials. Make sure to follow my other podcast called Was It Chance, found wherever you are listening to this episode right now. And everyone, now please enjoy this crossover episode with Andy Mientus.
Welcome to Was It Chance? This is the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. My name is Heather Vickery.
Yes, it is that podcast, and I'm Alan Seals. Heather and I started off as two perfect strangers who met by chance and then embraced opportunity. Listen in as we chat with other successful people about the risks they've taken to put themselves on a path to creative success. Heather, it's been a while since we've recorded a little bit. How you doing?
I'm doing good, but I miss you. It's more fun when I get to
too.
see you like every week or every other week. That's more fun for me.
I know. We should record more episodes. And
we should do that. And you know what I'm excited about? So we have been deep in the author realm the last few months, which I am into because, you know, I love to read. But I have missed our Broadway peeps, and we have one with us today. Will you tell everyone who's here with us?
Oh, snap. Yes, it is Andy Mientus. Okay. Actually,
easy for you to say.
Mientus. No, well, that's how you say his name.
No, I'm not talking about
you
that.
nailed it.
Mientus. And I asked AI to write a little intro, so this is what it did.
No.
Hey, musical theater fans and
Could be
superhero
anything.
enthusiasts, buckle up. Today on the podcast, we've got a guest who's a true force on both the stage and the screen, the incredibly talented Andy Mientus. Andy is an actor who has wowed audiences in Broadway shows like Spring Awakening, Les Mis, and Wicked, but being more than just a theater guy, he's captivated the screen as well. He's brought his charisma to life in shows like Smash and Gone, but it's his role on The Flash that many fans know him for as the tech-savvy villain Hartley Rathaway, also known as the Pied Piper. Mientus stole the show. He brought a layer of complexity and humor to the role that made Pied Piper a fan favorite despite being a supervillain. He's now about to star in Tick, Tick, Boom at the historic Kate Playhouse in Dennis, Massachusetts. Woo! Andy, we are thrilled to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Can you literally send that exact text directly to my manager? Because that
the perfect bio.
It's better than any bio I've ever had. I am flattered. I feel prestigious, and damn, AI is coming for us. But if it's nice like that, I don't mind so much. I'm less scared.
The key to it is you have to frame your question, telling it what voice it needs to speak in. So I literally said, you are a podcast host on a fun podcast. Write an introduction for Broadway actor Andy Mientus, and then spit it out.
Could you like do it again with like an NPR sort of very self-serious? Like,
Yes.
Yeah, you can say like,
yeah.
like in the voice of boring sweaty balls, like write an intro for Andy, and it would be like, hey, people who really like NPR, this is something like that.
Wow, we live in the future. I embrace it. I embrace our robot overlords. I think they'll do a better job than we.
I mean, what choices do we have, really?
Right? It's coming. It's coming, and we can't do anything about it.
But theater, I've been talking a lot with people about I was like, oh, what if we're the last one left, right? Like, what if theater's the last thing that you can do in person, see in person, the last way you can make a living as an artist because you can't. Do you know what I mean? It's going to take a while for the robots to look human. Like we're very quickly going to sound human.
Quote of the day.
But it's going to take a while, I think, unless I'm really stupid. Like, I think maybe we're okay from a minute on stage. So that's
live theater, because
my eggs in the basket.
Television and movies, it's game over.
It's all over. Yeah, no,
Listen,
it's all over.
As somebody who has co-founded a Broadway podcast network and has a strong technical background and is trying to introduce technical change into the industry, I have to say you are 100% correct. It's going to be the last industry to change because nobody wants to embrace it and nobody understands the tech. The people running the industry are just clueless. No offense to anyone running the industry, but please reach out to me. I can help.
Great. When the robot overlords come for all of us, you'll be my first call. How do I survive? What do I do now?
Listen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited you're here. And
me too.
We're going to talk about so many things. You know, this show is all about taking intentional risk for creative success. And in so many cases, we know we're taking a risk and we have no idea whether or not it's going to pay off. Can you remember maybe all the way back, like that first really risky thing you did that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I feel like most of my career has been like weird intentional risks. I feel like I really stumbled in the back door of almost every huge opportunity that I've had. The first being while I was in school at the University of Michigan for musical theater. I think it was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year. I went to New York and crashed on Benj Pasik's couch and saw some shows, did some rush tickets for shows because I was broke. And everyone was urging me to see this show called Spring Awakening, and that was playing at the Atlantic Theater.
Yeah,
that was playing at the Atlantic Theater. It is nuts. Yeah. And I got a ticket. I got probably the last ticket available. And I went and saw it and I was like, oh, holy shit, like this is it. This is all of my interests combined. This is a show that I just have to be close to and be a part of. And I just love it so much for so many reasons. And a bunch of us ended up seeing it that summer. And so I started this Facebook group back when you could do that, for half as a joke and half as for the kids at Michigan that saw the show that liked the show to kind of tell other kids at school about the show, and to feel cool that we had seen it because it was this, little buzzy thing.
So you were the original Spring Awakening stan, as the kids say.
Sure. And literally, guys, I think I might have been one of the first social media managers. I'm getting ahead of myself, but literally, I think I may have been one of the very first social media managers for a Broadway show, because then I made this group. Again, it's sort of like a half joke. And I had a little bit of acumen with editing photos. So I was able to put text on a photo and make it the right size and make it look kind of cool. And people that I didn't know started joining the group. And I was like, oh, and so it was 10, 50, 100, 200, it really started to go. And then I get this DM from a producer, a co-producer, who I actually just saw at Illinois 2 weeks ago. Crazy. Asking me, he was like, hey, we were looking to set up a Facebook group because this show is, young for young people. And we're looking to use social media to engage young people. And we saw that you already have one. And what do you say we just make this the official page of the show and you can run it? I was like, yeah, totally.
That's amazing.
Sure, I'll work for free.
Sure, I'll work for free, literally for free. No shade to them. I didn't expect, I expected nothing. I didn't know, this was way before social media was something that people paid for, certainly. Yeah. And so I had this, kind of insider relationship with the production where they would I broke news for them. They would send me news items and tell me when to post it and casting and stuff. And I would moderate the page. And it was my little, in between my classes at school, my little, gig. And then when open calls were coming up for the future of the show for both Broadway replacements and the national tour, they knew that I was an actor, that I was in school for acting. And they were like, hey, you should come around. And so I went to the open call in Chicago. I drove with some friends to Chicago. I stood in line next to an actor named Corey Mock, who's in Merrily We Roll On, still one of my friends to this day in the industry. We stood next to each other in line. I got there at 5 a.m. And I put on my resume on my special skills that I ran this page. And I'll never forget Carrie Gardner, who's still a very prominent casting director in New York, was running this call. And she's like reading my resume. And she said, okay, what is this? Like in that exact tone. She's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, oh, well, actually, and so I ended up getting a call back the next day from Moritz, actually. And I went to that, and then I went home and I didn't hear anything for like 6 months. I was like, well, what an adventure. And then suddenly they needed a like last minute Broadway replacement, a temporary replacement for Hunchon. I'm really going on and on and on. I'll wrap this up. But basically that led me to auditioning several times for the show. And then I got cast on the national tour, which was my first big job and my kind of big break. All because I worked for free on a social media thing that I made.
That.
Yeah.
Wow. So you just randomly said yes to this weird outreach. How much time did it take to manage the page? A lot.
It was a lot of work. Yeah,
right.
A lot of time. Yeah, because again, I'm like a lot was happening with the show. I started this between their off-Broadway and Broadway runs. So like you figure everything that happened from. I finally passed it off to somebody when I joined the show. I was like, well, this is inappropriate and impossible that I be still running this thing. So now I have to, hand it over to like, I don't even remember who I did that to or whatever became of it. But like for, a couple of years through like their transfer, the Tonys, the cast album, like, the reviews, like all of these major events for the show. And then the huge like media, like that iconic Gap ad they did. And like, just like all these things. I was the one being like, go see this at the Apple store,
That's so cool. But what I love about that is just this reminder that doing something you have passion for can lead to so many incredible opportunities, because that might not have shaken out that way for you if you hadn't been in love with the show and started this Facebook group.
And being like close to your goals, even if they're completely tangential, right? Like I remember having like an acting teacher growing up being like, if you like love a theater, just like be at that theater, like scrub toilets if you have to, like, which I don't know that I would actually recommend that advice. She's like came up in the 70s. I think it was a different time, but the sentiment is there, right? To just like be as close as you can to like the arena in which you want to participate. And then you meet somebody, you strike up a conversation at a party, like, cause this sort of set the tone for like the rest of my career, where like, there's this old adage that like, it's who you know that gets you in rooms, which is really true. And not in like, I always thought that meant like, oh, you gotta like network and be really like deliberate about that. But it's actually more organic than that. It's like the people you meet socially who just like think you're cool and smart and like fun to be around will call you to like be a part of their thing. And then the risk is, putting yourself out there, I guess, and then saying yes when these things come along, even if you're like, I'm not totally sure how this is gonna, turn into my actual goals, but like, but it's a step, and to take that step.
Speaking of people liking you, I let Steven Sater know that we were talking today, and to see if he wanted to come in and stream crash, and he is unfortunately unavailable, but he did want me to tell you he's known you since college, and he loves you, and you need to catch up soon.
Steven.
What a sweetheart. He's really a dear, sweet
Little
dear,
does he
man.
know, we were talking about his wonderful, quotable Alice by Heart script right before we started recording. Now
we
he knows.
Sure were. He's in the air. He's a sorcerer. There's something going on.
He's
there.
all over the place. All of a sudden he's just like, yeah, here's an album I did with Burt Bacharach. I'm like, what the?
Well,
Just
that's
totally
when
out of
we had
nowhere.
him on, was when that album came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Andy, what did you love most about being part of the production of Spring Awakening?
Wow. What did I love most about it? I loved being a part of like a sea change in what musicals could sound like and would sound like, and who they would include for the next little while, right? Like, and what they could be about and the tone of them. Like, I remember Michael Mayer saying that when they created the show, like in development and then mounted it at the Atlantic, there was no like atom of them that thought it was going to be this like big commercial phenomenon. They thought they were making this deeply avant-garde, deeply niche, very serious, piece of chamber theater based on this obscure, dark sexual play about like German children learning to masturbate. Like it's totally insane. Like that show hit the zeitgeist.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
I was a weird kid. Like I went to this weird acting program in Pittsburgh. So like I grew up in Pittsburgh, and luckily there are lots of arts opportunities in Pittsburgh because of like old steel endowment. And so I was exposed to lots of different shit for free. Like they would put up a sign up sheet to like go on a field trip to see like anything. And there were like plays at the Pittsburgh Public Theater, and there was opera, and there was ballet. And I would always sign up mostly to like get out of class because I was a bad student. But then I started to really enjoy seeing like whatever was available, which really like broadened my palette. And then I went to this extracurricular acting program that, again, I mentioned this already, but it was sort of run by these like ex-New Yorker actors that were like in New York trying to make it in the 70s. And now they like moved to Pittsburgh and became these like hippie theater teachers. And so like the first monologue I ever did when I was like 10 years old was from House of Blue Leaves by John Guar. Like I was interested in very weird grown-up stuff. And that's why like Rent really spoke to me, to like bring it back to Jonathan Larson, because I didn't really connect with like, the like Rodgers and Hammerstein catalog. Like now I love it as a grown-up, but like I was interested in like the darker, weirder stuff. And so even when I was in school, I'm like a little guy. Like my professors kept wanting me to play like Arpad and She Loves Me and like these quirky, which like is fun, but like I wanted to kind of like, be that weird German kid learning to masturbate. And
did you want to learn to be German or learn to masturbate?
I'll leave
Either
that
way.
to the listener to decide. But and then like I grew up in like a household that loved music but didn't necessarily love musical theater. Like I kind of found that on my own. And so, in school I was learning to use what I would call my like expensive voice, like like vibrato. But when I like sang in the shower, I wanted to sound like Bruce Springsteen or Joni Mitchell or these like artists that I would listen to growing up. And so I was musical theater when I was studying it in school for the first little while felt like a real like put on, I was learning skills to like learn how to participate in this art form that I appreciated but didn't feel organically like capable of. And then Spring Awakening was like, oh, I can sound like me, I can look like me, I can like talk about and enact like weird, cool stuff and these stories that are really like the structure of it is really bizarre and it's really out there and just interesting, the kind of show that I would want to see, and I could like be in it. And so I loved like getting to do that. And I did it on the national tour. So we're doing it in like, the Fox Theater, like it's 5,000 seats. Like and at that point, the show was really kind of at like the height of its powers, right? Like it had won all the Tonys and it had become this cultural thing. And so these cities were so excited to like have it and to see it and see what all the fuss was about. And so to see like a show like that play at that scale and be embraced in that way and to get to be a part of it and then have that inform like my career, the kinds of musicals and shows that were gonna get made for the next like 10 years because everyone was inspired by that show and that show proved that kind of show can do well. It just felt really exciting.
And it's interesting because you said, you had a musical family but not musical theater. And I would say, I mean, I'm quite clearly, I think probably a musical theater nerd. And I've raised my kids on it, but they are not musical theater nerds, except every once in a while it peaks out a little. So you give me hope that they'll turn into more musical theater nerds.
You have time. You can radicalize them
got time.
Slowly.
Yeah.
I was going to touch on the difference between like what you say, your expensive voice and the fun voice, the voice you actually like, because hot take, I don't particularly groove to Sondheim.
Whoa.
Really?
This has been great, you guys. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Wow. Alan, you just outed
me.
yourself to the whole Broadway podcast community.
No. Tell me why.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
Why. Yeah.
Like, I realize I understand it's amazing. I realize he's got a talent, but like from my voice, it doesn't speak to me. I don't want to sing his stuff. I like to watch it. The current production of Merrily We Roll Along is wonderful. It didn't blow me away like everybody else because it's still just like the way he writes is sort of herky-jerky in the rhythms, and it's not.
It's not a melodic,
right,
singable always, like
singable always, yes. And so along these points, what got me into theater, what allowed me to say I want to go down this creative path was Rent, was Jonathan Larson, was him changing the game.
It's more approachable.
It's more approachable, and it just spoke to me the way that Hamilton did, in 2015, the way that other shows are, like even what Stereophonic is doing to plays right now. When something comes out that is just so uniquely different, it stands out. And Sondheim did that, and I think if I was another generation older, Sondheim would sit in that place for me. But for me, in my generation, Jonathan Larson is what got me, like the end of the British invasion of Broadway is what got me into Broadway.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Sondheim was such an influence for Jonathan Larson, and in fact, like appears, spoiler alert, a little bit as a character in Tick Tick Boom. He's evoked and is in the air. But when I think about it, I think what you're touching on is like the accessibility of melody and song, and like the songs sounding like songs on the radio, where like when it was R&H and Cole Porter and like in the golden age, like musical theater songs were on the radio. Musical theater music was pop music, right? Like that was like the American Songbook. It was no different. And then Sondheim sort of changed the game to make it this more like cerebral, more composed, more like based in classical music, and more like, not melodically accessible, like R&H and Cole Porter and Irving Berlin and the dudes would like kind of seduce you into hearing the story by like on the wave of this melody. And then Sondheim was like, no, don't do that. Let me like alienate you from that to like wake you up. And then I feel like Larson and some others kind of brought it back, right? Like kind of was like, we can do melody again. We can do accessible, and we can make it sound like pop music. We can make it sound like music that you will hear on the radio. So it's like both old and new. Yeah.
Well, speaking of pop music, let's talk about Dolly Parton for a hot sec.
Yeah, let's talk about Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. So, part of your credits too, you were on an episode of Dolly Parton's Heartstrings. Did you get to work with Dolly?
I sure did. We had a scene together. We acted together, and she was also very like present in the whole thing. She was at the table read. She had like jokes prepared based on everyone's credits. Like she had like done her research about us and like who was in her thing and like what we had done. And so she had like jokes for like, Andy, I know you're going to be a smash, and like things like that. And then
Andy, I know y'all going to be a smash.
Like literally. And then the day that she joined us on set for the first day, it was just like amazing. You smell her before you see her in a good way. She like smells like beautiful, in a
good way.
In a good way. Like you smell, I don't know what her like signature scent is, but it like wafts through and you're like, oh,
here
Dolly's here.
Dolly.
And here comes Dolly. And then you see the hair, like the wig next. And then you see her, and she has gotten very good over the years, I think, at like knowing what people, what it means to people to meet her and how to handle that situation. So she really cares for you in that moment, because everyone's kind of like, oh, you're Dolly Parton. And she's like, yes, I am, And she knew that I had sang Hard Candy Christmas at an event for the Trevor Project.
What?
And so she's like, Andy, I saw the video of you singing Hard Candy Christmas, and I hope you'll sing it with me right now. And I'm like, okay. And we stood there, and she held my hands, and we sang Hard Candy Christmas together. And I'll never forget it.
Well, So what chance took you to working with Dolly? Was it just a good old audition, or did something?
It was a good old audition.
Yeah.
It was a good old audition, but I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a risk. Although I will say that like I remember the breakdown for that. So it was a gay thing, which this was a risk for her, I think. Like it was the show was an anthology series in which every episode was basically like a short movie based on one of her songs. And so like there was a Jolene episode where like they kind of like blew out the like, because Dolly's songs are so narrative, they like blew that out into a full, like the story of Jolene and the wife and the husband and, and ours was Two Doors Down, which is about like, two doors down, they're having a party, and I'm like sitting alone feeling sorry for myself. And it like took that idea and blew it out into this Christmas story about a like mother who is presiding over this family. Her daughter is getting married, and so the family's coming back together, and it comes out during the party that her son, who's closeted because he's Southern and, closeted, gets like outed. And the mother, like, basically like everything that can go wrong with this wedding goes wrong, including this like revelation about her son. And she's like having a terrible time. And then through the magic of like family and Dolly Parton, they all come back together in the end, just in time for New Year. I think that was a big risk for Dolly to like include a queer storyline in her series. And I think that's what people love about Dolly, is that she really is for everybody. She's like the most uncontroversial person, and she's able to be like kind of radically inclusive in her like programming and things she makes. She appears on Beyonce's new album, sort of like welcoming Beyonce into country in a way that is really helpful, where like this fan base for, terrible reasons might not be receptive to that. And for me, I remember when the like audition came in, it was like, and I hate when it says this on auditions, but it happens so often. They're like, hot, like the character is like handsome, like killer, and you
have to go, oh, that's me, I'm perfect.
Smile, like you know what I mean, like, and I'm like, oh, like that's flattering that anyone would think that I might be that, but like I have a crooked smile that I'm quite self-conscious about, actually, and I just like would never be like, I'm the most handsome guy in the room. But I said, you know what, it's Dolly Parton, I'm gonna be brave and look as handsome as I can on this day and go in and just try, and it worked out. So
we all think you're very handsome here at
Thank you. And that was why I brought that up, because I wanted to fish for compliments. So
I
please
can see
DM
that,
me when you listen to this. And no, it's
yes,
true. It's
everybody
like,
tell
there's
Andy
a
how
difference
handsome
between,
he is. Yeah.
Listen, I don't I got married to a handsome man. I'm doing fine, but I also recognize, and I hope everyone else can, that there's a difference between like regular, good looking dude and like TV, perfect, symmetrical, like that's a different thing.
Absolutely.
Especially in the gay world. And so I was like, I don't know about all this.
I met Angelina Jolie on the red carpet for The Outsiders a few weeks ago. You want to talk about TV and movie perfect?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, I just was performing at the Met Gala
really
last week, which is a whole nother story. And so I saw like kind of all the most beautiful people in the world at this thing. And there is, it's a different stock, and I congratulate them.
What did you wear to the Met Gala?
Oh, I wore what they put me in. I was an employee.
Oh.
But then I brought a tuxedo to wear afterward. So I put on a tuxedo.
So, what chance did you break to go to the Met Gala? I put on the clothes they gave me. And
I put on the clothes
a paycheck was the chance.
Yeah.
That's fair. For us plebes, speaking out of my own mouth, I don't understand the purpose of the Met Gala other than to
well, let me tell you, because I actually think this is an important thing, because I feel like, the Met Gala is a very ostentatious event, I will say, and everyone can agree on. And I think that draws a lot of very valid and worthy criticism about like, opulence, money, what we're putting money into when there are, there's a lot going on in the world always, but, maybe especially right now where we could be funneling resources. The thing about the Met Gala is that it is a benefit for the Costume Institute of the Met to preserve important pieces of fashion, which are pieces of art, which you can agree with that or not. But, I agree with that. I think these are important artifacts made by people that are, significant to our culture, our global culture.
I agree.
And the Costume Institute is the only part of the Met that needs to do its own fundraising. So this is the event that does that. And so they raised $26 million this year for it. So it is like a benefit for a museum. And I think that's important context. And if like the celebrity, the fashion, the attention that, people care maybe way too much about when there's a lot of other things to care about in the world, that gets a lot of attention, but it's for the purpose of raising a bunch of money for this museum. And it now raises like, 10 times what it raised before Anna Wintour came on board. So she's actually kind of a genius, I think, in making it this media frenzy around this stuff. So that's all I have to say about that. Being inside it, I was like, oh, I have some new context here for like what this is and what it's for.
I'm glad you shared that, because I learned that same thing last week in a Threads post from previous Was It Chance guest Lulu Picard. So
wow.
I was grateful to learn that, because it made me appreciate the effort instead of just kind of be a hater and think the world is literally on fire around us and we're wearing sand dresses.
And I get that. And it's important that we talk about that every year when it comes up, because it is important to talk about like, why do we do this? Why do we value celebrity? And there are plenty of events that are just for attention. And Met Gala is not exactly one of them. Like, you know what I mean?
That.
It is for some people, it is for some attendees, certainly, but their like $75,000 table is going directly to fund this part of the museum. So that's all I have to say about that.
No, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. And I didn't realize they are the only area that needs to do fundraising. So yeah, you make it a contest between celebrities to see who can dress the craziest, and then they
steal their money, guys.
Yeah,
like steal their money for art. Like that's cool to me.
Yeah.
And also, can we get a Tony Award category for best wig design? Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that.
That doesn't exist yet. And
let's do that.
Beautiful.
You could start
hairs.
a campaign, Alan. If anybody could do it, it's you.
Me?
Yeah.
Now, remember that whole thing I said at the beginning about like the Broadway being the last industry to want to change? I'm trying so hard.
Do you have a favorite wig this season?
Oh God.
I know I'm putting you on the spot. We can come back to
That's
this.
good. No, put him on the spot.
I'm trying to remember everything I've seen. The problem is not problem. This is a good thing. When it's done really well, you don't notice it's a wig.
Exactly.
Right. And
exactly.
I see
wig.
sometimes like, oh, is that real? Is that not? Like Emma Pittman in The Outsiders. She has naturally red hair. I can't tell if on stage that's a wig or not, but it's beautiful.
Yeah. With women, you can almost always assume it's a wig just
Right.
because it's just harder to, you know what I mean? There's like more hair, it's more unpredictable. And so I would bet that is a wig. And yeah.
I like Brody Grant's wigs in The Outsiders too, because he has to dye it to go on when they're on the lam. He has to bleach it. It's this horrible bleach job.
The only wig I've ever worn on stage was in Wicked. When I spoiler alert, if you've never seen Wicked, this is your chance to bow out. 3,
Fast
2,
forward.
1. When Bach becomes the Tin Man, that silver wig. That's the only wig I've ever had to wear on stage.
What was that like?
Oh, right.
Yeah, what was
Wicked in general, or like the transformation?
No, your experience.
It was a blast. It was like getting into a bath because, like, you know, previous to that, I had done like my year before I had done Deaf West Spring Awakening, the other production of Spring Awakening that I did, which, you know, was a very like niche thing. We were always trying to like beg people to come. And I had done this play called Bent at the Mark Taper Forum, which is this like deadly serious Holocaust play. And I mean, before that I did Les Mis, which was a real crowd pleaser. But I feel like I had done some like real challenging stuff that didn't always have like a full house, you know? And so then to do Wicked, which is indestructible, it always works no matter like what weird collection of coverage is on that day, because it's a big cast and it's difficult and people are out all the time, or what, you know, city we were in and what like was different about that auditorium or whatever. It's indestructible, and the house was always chock full of people who had been waiting like all year to see it. You know, they bought their tickets like a year ago, so the energy was always like immaculate. You know, good vibes every day at Wicked, and really just fun, like a fun show to do.
We're gonna take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back. Are you okay talking about HNPP?
That was gonna be my question.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay.
Would you consider that an invisible disability? Like no one would know, and how important it is to talk about that?
I would be very cautious to claim disabled for myself, at least right now in my life. Like so what it is, I have this neurological condition, I would say, called HNPP, hereditary neuropathy with pressure palsies, that is very rare. I was diagnosed when I was 9 years old because I woke up one morning and my foot was paralyzed. And and I thought that I had broken my foot, because I remember learning as a child, like, if you can't move it, like if you fall down and hit your arm and you can't move it, that means you broke it. So I remember like waking up in the morning, walking from my bedroom to the bathroom and falling. I like tripped and fell. And I got up and I tripped and fell again. And then I realized that my foot wouldn't work at all. And I was like, that's interesting. And I called my mom over and I was like, hey mom, I think my foot's broken. I can't move it. And she was like, oh, we're going to the ER. Luckily, my mom is a nurse and she also has this condition because it is hereditary neuropathy.
And she knew it at the time.
So they were like, this is something neurological is going on. And I had no obvious injuries. So everyone's panicking. They're thinking I'm having a stroke. I have MS. Like, there's any number of like really serious things that could be a symptom of. And my mom was like, let's absolutely test for everything. Let me just tell you, I have this thing. I've had this exact symptom and this might be what it is. And so then I was diagnosed. We were the first like parent-child pair of people with this that my neurologist had ever seen. It's that rare. And so basically it's a demyelinating condition in which it's very similar to MS, but it's not as severely progressive or certainly as quickly progressive. So basically like you have this coating on your nerves that protects them from injury. And when you have MS or this, that coating will mysteriously just like vanish. It will like go away, making you prone to neurological damage. Like something happens up here and then it affects like your hand down the chain. And when you have MS, those things typically don't come back. So it's like a progressive disease in which like you lose functionality in, anything basically that your nerves can control bit by bit. And so that's why it, makes people disabled and then ultimately is fatal for a lot of folks. Whereas with HMPP, it comes back, which is very lucky. And so some things, as I understand it, will go away forever. And I have one thing that has gone away forever. Pretty much everyone's pretty sure, but like very, very, very slowly and probably not at all. Again, my mother is 70 years old and is completely healthy. There's nothing wrong with her.
That's great.
So I'm in all likelihood going to be absolutely fine, but it does weird stuff. Like, so the thing that's gone forever on me is this nerve that holds your shoulder blade in place. And so my shoulder blade like wings out. I'm always like hunched here and it causes a lot of weird stuff up my neck because it's like my shoulder is pulling on stuff in my neck. And turns out your nerves in like this part of your shoulder and your neck are what innervate your ear and control your spatial stuff.
Whoa.
So I have chronic vertigo that I get like a lot.
Oh man.
I have like terrible migraine, a lot of pain over here that I have to just manage. And then, so that's kind of the like constant thing that I'm always like navigating. But then there is always this low level threat that I'm going to wake up one morning and not be able to move stuff, which has happened in my career. And then you have to like adjust. Like when I was doing Carrie, there was this part where we had to like be up on this wall, like, spoiler alert, if you've never seen or known Carrie, everybody dies. And
lots of blood.
Carrie kills all the kids at the prom. And in our production, they did this cool thing where they wanted her to like kind of throw everyone against the wall with her telepathy. So like the lights went down and when they came back up, we were all like on the wall and we were actually like holding on to these like pieces of rebar and stuff. And that like was too much pressure on some like nerve in my forearm or something. And it knocked out my grip strength in my hand. I couldn't like pinch. I couldn't grab anything. I couldn't do my buttons. And so I had to change my costume. Wow. I had to change my blocking. And luckily everyone was very receptive to that, open to what's what I'm looking for. They were great about it at MCCA about making those adjustments. Also, it's an inflammatory kind of disease where it flares up and that will mean that other things happen too. Mm-hmm. So like that happened because I was in a flare up and I didn't know it. So at the time I was also getting really severe vertigo, really severe. And so there were a couple times that I called out like after the opening number, like I would like get out on stage and I would hit the first like move and the entire theater would swing around and I would be like, I can't do this. And our stage manager, Amber White, was very gracious with me about that and took me personally to the ER one time because I was just like freaking out. My medication wasn't right yet. And so, it's like, luckily I've learned how to manage it. I've learned not to panic. I've learned to just kind of like be like, oh, I'm having one of those days where I'm like a little rocky or something's up. And so it's something I've learned how to navigate and deal with.
But in college, this kind of led to a chance encounter too, right? Because you got moved out of one class into another.
Yes, you've really done your research. So
we love that, Alan, and his research.
Thank you, Alan. Yes.
You're welcome.
So my very first day of my freshman year of college, in my very first class was ballet like 1. And I am not a dancer. I love to dance, love to go out to the club, but do not love to learn choreography and try to execute it. Just not my thing. And so I was very nervous about ballet, especially because I'm very inflexible. So we're like doing the class and I'm stretching and my foot goes out. I feel it happening. And I'm like, oh no. Luckily, I know what's happening, but I also know that when that happens, it can be days, it can be weeks, it can be months before it comes back. Or like there's a vague possibility it might never come back, but that's super rare. I go to the ER, they're freaking out, but I'm telling them like what's up with me. Again, like no one knows what this condition is because it's so rare. And so I'm like educating them. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm fine. You don't need to like keep me overnight to make sure I'm not having a major like neurological episode. But now I can't take ballet for the semester because I can't move my foot. So they take me out of the ballet class and put me in the Tech 101 class, which the musical theater majors do have to take, but like later in their curriculum. It is a required class first semester for the theater majors, because at Michigan, the musical theater school is through the School of Music, whereas the theater department is through a different department. So like, by the time you're a senior, you interact a lot and you get to know the actors, but it's not like as closely married as some other programs. And certainly when you're a freshman, you're like kept kind of isolated. But that put me in class with my friend Darren Chris, several buddies who are now, still working in the industry. Kind of people might know this theater company called Star Kid that like became pretty famous for like making these silly musicals and putting them on YouTube. They were all like in the theater department at Michigan. And because I was now in this tech class with them, I like made this whole set of friends outside of my kind of core classmates who are still my friends today. And
Wait, what was your original major then if you weren't there for theater?
I was there for musical theater.
Oh, musical theater.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is at Michigan, for whatever reason, the musical theater department is through the School of Music. Whereas the theater department is in a different department. So they're not as, you don't like take the same, like there's some shared faculty, but they're kept a little bit more separate than in other schools. It's not like Carnegie Mellon or something where like the actors and the musical theater actors do like everything together. It's, you kind of have to like go out of your way to audition for like the plays or like the play actors to audition for the musicals. You can, but it's like a process.
That's interesting.
So gotta...
I wouldn't have gotten to know Darren as well as I do had that not happened, I don't think. So that, well, any second now, today, I'm pretty sure it's today, it's gonna be announced that he's doing a project. Yes, it's announced, it's on Playbill. Okay, so we can talk about this. He is doing a Broadway show that my husband is directing, and they became friends through me. So,
I love
husband
that.
Michael Arden.
These things, husband Michael Arden,
who won
director,
a Tony for Parade last year.
Yeah, he sure did. Is directing Darren in a Broadway show this fall, and just got announced just now. And it will be, that'll be old news by the time this comes out. But just goes to show there's like all these things I'm learning in life that like a little thing happens and then, literally like 15 years later, there are ramifications still. Like you just don't know how like the ripple effect of your life is going to play out. And so that's cool. There's like a comfort in that. There's like a, I don't believe in much, but it's nice to feel like there's maybe a path,
Well, quickly talk about your path to the Flash. How did that kind of come in? And then we have a game to play at the end that I'm excited to ask you about.
He's introducing me to a new game, so okay.
Yeah, Heather doesn't even know what this is yet.
So the Flash. So I was in New York a little while doing theater, trying to do theater, and then I like could not get on Broadway to save my life until I did a TV show about Broadway called Smash, which then sent me to LA because I was like, well, obviously I'm doing television, and I would love to do some theater someday, but that is just like not working out for me. And while I was there, I got an audition for a guest star on the show Arrow to play a character named Barry Allen, aka The Flash, who they were doing what's called a backdoor pilot, which like the Flash was going to feature in several episodes of Arrow to sort of gauge the like fans' response to this character to then get his own spinoff and lead the spinoff. And I was like, y'all, there is no way I am booking like the lead of a new superhero show in which I'm playing like the charismatic, straight superhero guy. Like that is just not my gig. But they were like, Andy, this is like a great audition. Please like get over yourself and go. And I was like, you're right. And so I went and did my best. And then I heard a couple of days later that like my tape, like, so I went into the office. Oh, and this isn't. Wait, no. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I got word that my tape is like making the rounds in the office, that like they like it and like it's kind of getting up through, which is a good sign. And then I get a call that I did not get it, that ultimately I'm not the guy, but that they really, liked what I did and they think there might be something else for me down the pike, which to be honest, you hear a lot and a lot of the time nothing comes. And so I was like, that's nice. Like, nice they said anything. Usually you don't hear anything at all. They just say, thanks so much. And that's it. You don't hear like, he was terrible. He was great. Nothing. You just move on. So I was like, okay, well, nice to get feedback. In the meantime, I get cast in Les Mis on Broadway. And so I moved back to New York to do Les Mis on Broadway for a year. So then I get an audition for a recurring character. They call it like a strong recurring, meaning like they have plans that this character is going to recur heavily in the show, named Hartley Rathaway, the Pied Piper, who I, to be honest, was unaware. I was not a like comic book person really growing up. And so I was unaware of this character, but I was quickly excited to learn that he was one of the first like major out gay characters in DC, that he came out in the 90s and that they were going to like keep the character gay for the series. I'm looking at the sides and like one of the very first lines that I had in the first audition scene was like, he gets kind of captured by the Flash and he's in handcuffs and he says, well, being handcuffed by a guy in head to toe leather is a long time fantasy of mine. So thanks. And I'm
awesome.
Like, oh, this is gay. Like we're doing this isn't like, this isn't like palatable. Like he just happens to be gay. Like I was like, oh no, he's making leather jokes. Like,
yes.
Because Greg Berlanti is the showrunner, famous, gay media mogul, writer, creator. And, there's just like, I can tell there's gays on the ground and I'm excited by that.
I love that.
I'm like, ooh, I want this so bad. But like, I'm doing Les Mis at the time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to like do it. And I have this audition coming up. So I'm going to fly to LA on my day off to audition. Because that was back then. We like weren't doing tapes yet. Or at least as much, or at least not at this, like the stakes of this audition. I have to go in. So I'm off Les Mis on Monday. I'm going to take the red eye Sunday night, get into LA on Monday morning, do the thing and fly back for my show on Tuesday. And in the Sunday matinee of Les Mis, as I'm like working on my sides, I start to notice that my vision is getting cloudy in one eye.
Oh no.
I'm like, oh, am I getting like pink eye? Like, what's that about? And it starts to sting. And it's starting to like close. And I'm like, I go to the stage management. I'm like, guys, something's up. And I don't know that I can continue, unfortunately. They're like, let us know, like, take care of yourself. By intermission, I'm like, I'm out. I absolutely, or not, sorry, not even by intermission. By the time I have to go from being like the ensemble track to Marius, because this is a tangent, but in Les Mis, you have to be in the ensemble when you're not your principal. And so I'm like various villagers and things until I have this 20-minute break before Marius shows up in Paris, in which I become Marius. And I hit that break and I'm like, my eye is swelling shut. Something is really wrong and I'm in a lot of pain. I need to go to the ER. And they're like, go, great. So they like put, Chris McCarroll, I think, who was my understudy at the time, in costume, and he goes on and I go to the ER and I have a corneal abrasion and they send me away with no pain medication and like just drops. And I have to go back to the ER that night. So I'm up until like the middle of the night. I think I missed my flight because of that. And I end up getting like the morning flight, but I do not sleep. And now I have to wear my glasses and my eye is like, I look crazy. And so I go in and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I have to wear my glasses. This thing happened to me. And they're like, totally fine. I do the audition. I get back to New York and I learned that I got it. And luckily Les Mis lets me take a leave of absence to shoot the first 2 episodes, which was a month. Took a month to shoot it. And they liked my glasses so much, they bought the exact same glasses as my prop glasses for the character. So the glasses that I wear on the show were they're not the same actual object, but they're the same.
That's
frames.
So fun.
Wow.
Random fun fact, my youngest daughter, who is 11, is currently binging The Flash. So last night I was like, so you know that character Hartley in The Flash? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh, I'm interviewing him tomorrow. I got really big cool points last night.
Oh. Anytime I work with kids, it's a big deal. Like when I did this production of Tommy, and all the little Tommies were like very excited that I was on this show. So that's fun.
That's awesome.
All right, one more quick break. Hang on a second. All right, here's the rest of the episode. All right. So, because this episode is also going to be a cross post later in my solo podcast, the theater podcast with Alan Seals. You should check it out. A game I've started doing on that feed is called Plot in 60 Seconds. So I put 60 seconds up on the screen, and then you have to give me the plot to a musical in that 60 seconds. And normally I would have you give me a number which corresponds to a list of shows that I have. But because of who you are, we're going to go with Spring Awakening. And go!
60 seconds remaining.
Spring Awakening is a alternative rock musical about German children learning how to masturbate in 1891. No, it's about German children awakening to their sexuality and butting up against a patriarchal parent society remaining. That won't listen to them and won't hear their pain and their cries, and what happens when parents and children, when generations can't speak to each other.
Wow.
Next.
Who's in it? What happens?
Kind of it's an ensemble cast of various characters, remaining. Melchior, Venla, Moritz, Marta, Hanshin, who all represent different aspects of being young, of being unheard. Various terrible things happen to almost all of them, unfortunately. But in the end, there's a hopeful message that that change is possible and that communication between generations is possible.
Oh, wow. 6 seconds left. So the normal, one of the closing questions we normally ask on Was It Chance? It was just, what is your relationship with failure in general?
It's a close personal friend because I experience it way more often than not. Many times a week do I fail. Yeah, it never gets easier. You never fail less. You think like the more times you fail, you're going to, I don't know, like learn something about how to make that not happen so much. But then when you do what I do, the thing itself is always changing. You know, it's, if I was auditioning for the same show again and again and again, maybe I would like finally crack it on the 200th time, but like it's a different show every time. And so you just get better at dealing with it maybe, but then it occasionally just will sneak up on you and you can't get up off the couch for the day because you're sad. And I've learned to be better at that, at being gentle with myself when that happens and just being like, yeah, this is the gig today, is just sort of taking care of myself, taking the day off, not thinking about it at all, playing with my dog, like whatever it takes, and just accepting that it's, given the literal rules of mathematics and probability, the more jobs you don't get, you're the closer you are to the one that you inevitably will get. You can only flip a tails so many times before you have to flip a heads. You try to remember that.
I love that.
Me too.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it is. It shows up over and over again. I think it's pretty powerful to say, oh yeah, we're buddies. Like this is gonna happen. We see each other a lot versus people who want to pretend. They think they need to pretend that they don't fail because that makes them stronger. It just
yeah, that's gonna bite you in the ass
for sure.
Kelly Clarkson wrote a whole song about it.
Andy, this is amazing. Thank you so much. What a treat for.
Thanks so much for having me.
How can folks follow along with the resume continues to grow and AI is going to try to hard to keep up, but how can folks find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I have been really limiting my online presence for my own health and safety.
Good for you.
So I am only now on Instagram. If you find me anywhere else, that's not actually me. It's just my name, at Andy Mientus. I only use this platform on Fridays, so you'll only see me post very rarely, but I always try to, when I do have something to share, to sell or promote or whatever, you can find it there. I'm also an author, which people may not know. We talked about, you talked about how much you loved having authors on the show and getting back to actors, and I happen to be both. I've written 3 middle grade books in a series called The Backstagers and 1 young adult novel called Fraternity, all published by Abrams books and available where all books are sold and on audiobook, which I read. So you can find those if you want to engage with that. Yeah, stay tuned for whatever the hell I keep myself busy with for the rest of the year. Who knows?
We didn't get a chance to cover The Backstagers. And then is anything happening with Burn All Night, your original musical?
Oh gosh, well, who can say?
Ooh, that tells me there's something juicy.
Oh,
well, who knows? But you'll have to have me back on. There's so much more to talk about.
Okay, we'll do it.
All right.
Andy, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye. That was so fun. He's darling.
Yes, he is darling. He is very darling.
I mean, he's very handsome, strong and handsome. Dolly got it right, but also just kind and fun and sweet and funny. And I'm going to use the word darling. Andy, I hope that's okay with you.
I'm Andy. I think it's okay. Yeah, did you hear that? He just said that in. That
You're
was great.
adorable.
Yeah.
I love it.
He's
And
totes
wow,
adorbs.
what a vast, beautiful resume.
Right?
Holy cow.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And author,
composer.
Is there anything
I mean,
this man can't do? Yeah.
That was something, like, I do want to have him back eventually. I mean, it sounds like there's something secret going on with Burn All Night, his original musical that we didn't have time to get into. But yeah, he's like author and this musical. And I was going to ask too about, like, in the artist world, you're often creating your own work to try to give yourself a platform to stand out. And I guess Lin-Manuel being one of the biggest examples of that succeeding is you write your own content if you can't find something that fits. But yeah, Andy's just this nice dude. He's darling, as you said.
He's darling.
Totes darling. And just goes with whatever is thrown at him. And especially, I'm so glad he was open about talking about HNPP. Because that's
important.
Greatly affecting his life and his career. And he's just like, all right, I'm going to put myself in environments where when I have a flare up or when I have an issue that I can adjust and continue and just adapt however you need to. And the whole crew or the whole cast is just like, yeah, we're going with it.
I mean, I think that's important. He did not want it to be considered an invisible disability, and I will totally honor that. But it is important to recognize that what's happening in our lives can affect other things, and we need to own it, and we need to be honest about it and find a way to work with it. And that's a big deal for him, for those things to pop up like that. And I love that the industry has found a way to make it all okay, and that he gets to keep doing this incredible work that he's so skilled at, no matter what. And just a reminder for listeners, like, whatever you've got going on, find a way to make it work for you. Don't let it shut you down.
I agree. Don't let it shut you down. Keep going and lead into what makes you uniquely different. That's what always, that's the takeaway of everything in the arts world is just don't try to be somebody else, because you're going to be an imitation of them. Be your best self.
That's right. Oh, I love that. That's a nice place to put a pin in it. Alan, boop. We love to hear from all of the listeners. Can you tell folks how they can find us and where they can find us?
Sure. I'm able to. Yes, find us at wasitchancepodcast@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at Threads, just at our name, Was It Chance. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening, because it helps spread the word. And shoot a message in our DMs, tag us in your stories. We'll repost, we'll share, we'll respond, because it's just us doing this, man. We do it for the funsies.
And by just us, he means it's me.
Hey, I lend a voice and I edit and I post.
He does. No, I don't. Alan does a ton of work. I'm talking about on social media.
Oh, yeah. Social media, that's all you. I
do talk to myself. I crack myself up. I'll post as Was It Chance, and then I'll respond as me. And
you're showing all your cards. You're showing all your cards right now.
You guys, I know. I'm just saying, we're working really hard over here. Alan works his ass off. He does all the editing. He works so hard. Well, I'm so grateful for you, Alan.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you, too. Let's keep this going.
You're my BFF. I sent you a BFF post on Instagram the other day. Did you see it?
No, if it's a story, I typically don't see them because they go away so quickly. I don't check every day because I'm not that good with social media. See, that's why you do it.
That's why I do it. Well, we really do listen. And I will say this, I screenshot and share. And I'm like, Alan, look, they love us. It's very exciting. And then we get all, goofy and googly-eyed.
They really like me.
They like us. Come say hi, follow, share with your friends, tell everybody about it. We have so much fun doing this show and bringing you these incredible guests, and we're really, really grateful that you join us. You have been listening to Was It Chance? This is the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. And I promise you are creative. I'm Heather Vickery.
And I promise you are creative too. I'm Alan Seal.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye, friends.